Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats reread podcast. I'm your host, Coffee, and today we are reading chapters 8 through 11 of The Darkest Hour. I'm sorry the schedule has been so inconsistent. This summer's been wild, man. Mostly bad, if I'm being honest. I'm working a lot, and next week I'm going on vacation, so I'm going to try to record an episode ahead of time and schedule it for next Monday, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen because I'm still working a lot. So I'll post an update on my socials if I end up not being able to schedule in advance. So after I get back from vacation, which is not very long, it should be a regular schedule, but lots of things have happened. This month in particular, July's been insane. So, I apologize for the delays. I'm keeping at it. Anyway, where we last left off, Firestar and Bramblepaw had a little come to StarClan moment where they both admitted that they didn't really trust each other, but Firestar finally seems to see Bramblepaw as he's his own cat. He's not his father. So, it seems like everything is going to be good from here on out in terms of their relationship. So, we're picking up right back where we left off, where they were on patrol together. Chapter 8. The snow had stopped by the time Firestar and Bramblepaw got back to the camp entrance. They heard a yowl behind them and turned to see Graystripe. Quote, "Hi," panted the Grey Warrior as he caught up with them. His eyes widened when he saw their catch. "You've had better luck than me. I couldn't find so much as a mouse." Firestar grunted sympathetically as he led the way toward the gorse tunnel. He noticed that Sorrelkit, the most adventurous of Willowpelt's 3 kits, had left the camp and climbed halfway up the steep slope farther along the ravine. To Firestar's surprise, she was with Darkstripe. The warrior was bending over her, saying something to her. "Odd," Firestar muttered through a mouthful of squirrel fur, half to himself. "Darkstripe has never shown much interest in kits before. And what's he doing out here on his own?" Suddenly, Firestar heard a sharp exclamation from Graystripe, and his friend flashed past him, hurtling along the side of the ravine, his paws scrabbling against the loose, snow-covered stones. At the same moment, Sorrelkit's legs crumpled underneath her sturdy tortoiseshell body, and she started writhing in the snow. Firestar dropped his fresh kill in amazement as Graystripe yowled, "No!" and flung himself on the Dark Warrior. Darkstripe clawed and flailed at him with his hind legs, but Graystripe's teeth were sunk in his throat and would not let go. "What?" Firestar dashed down the slope with Bramblepaw right behind him. He dodged the fighting cats, still locked together in a whirlwind of teeth and claws, and reached Sorrelkit's side. The little kit twisted and turned on the ground, her eyes wide and glazed. She was letting out high-pitched moans of pain, and there was foam on her lips. Did Darkstripe try to poison her? "Get Cinderpelt," Firestar ordered Bramblepaw. His apprentice shot off, his paws sending up puffs of snow. Firestar bent over the young kit and placed a paw gently on her belly. "It's all right," he murmured. "Cinderpelt is coming." Sorrelkit's jaws gaped wide, and Firestar caught a glimpse of half-chewed berries in her mouth, scarlet against her white teeth. "Deathberries," he gasped. "Oh, Darkstripe, you are gonna pay." There was a dark-leaved shrub growing from a crack in the rock just above his head, with more of the lethal scarlet berries clustered among the leaves. He remembered a time many moons ago when Cinderpelt had appeared just in time to stop Cloudtail from eating the deathberries, and warned him of how poisonous they were. Later, Yellowfang had used them to kill her son, Brokentail. Firestar had seen for himself how quickly and fatally they worked. Crouching over Sorrelkit, Firestar did his best to scoop the crushed berries out of her mouth, but the kit was in too much terror and pain to keep still and make his task easier. Her head thrashed from side to side, and her body was convulsing in regular spasms that to Fireheart's horror seemed to be growing weaker. He could still hear Graystripe and Darkstripe screeching in the throes of their fight, but they seemed oddly far away. All his attention was concentrated on the kit. Then, to his relief, he felt Cinderpelt arrive beside him. "Deathberries," he told her quickly. "I've tried to get them out, but—" Cinderpelt took his place by the kit's side. She had a bundle of leaves in her mouth. Setting them down, she mewed. "Good. Keep holding her, Firestar, while I take a look." With 2 of them to help, and the kit's struggles definitely growing weaker, Cinderpelt was soon able to paw out the remains of the deathberries. Then she rapidly chewed up one of her leaves and stuffed the pulp into Sorrelkit's mouth. "Swallow it," she ordered. To Firestar, she added. "It's yarrow. It'll make her sick." The kit's throat convulsed. A moment later, she vomited. Firestar could see more scarlet specks among the pulp of leaves. "Good," Cinderpelt mewed soothingly. "That's very good. You're going to be fine, Sorrelkit." The little kit lay gasping and trembling. Then Firestar watched in dismay as she went limp and her eyes closed. "Is she dead?" he whispered. Before Cinderpelt could reply, a yowl came from the entrance to the camp. "My kit! Where's my kit?" It was Willowpelt, racing up the ravine with Bramblepaw. She crouched beside Sorrelkit, her blue eyes wide and distraught. "What happened?" She ate death berries, Cinderpelt explained. But I think I've gotten rid of them all. We'll carry her back to my den and I'll keep an eye on her. Willowpelt began licking Sorrel-Kit's tortoiseshell fur. By now, Firestar had seen the faint rise and fall of the kit's flank as she breathed. She was not dead, but he could see from Cinderpelt's anxious look that she was still in danger from the effects of the poison. For the first time, Firestar had a chance to draw breath and look for Graystripe. The Grey Warrior had pinned Darkstripe down a few tail lengths away with one paw on his neck and another on his belly. Darkstripe was bleeding from one ear, and he spat in fury as he fought vainly to free himself. "What's going on?" Firestar demanded. "Don't ask me," snarled Graystripe. Firestar could hardly remember seeing his friend look so savage. "Ask this piece of fox-dung why he tried to murder a kit." "Murder?" Firestar echoed. The accusation was so unexpected that for a heartbeat he could do nothing but stare stupidly. "Come on, man. Darkstripe has evil, rancid vibes. He's had evil, rancid vibes this entire arc. Are we really this surprised? Are you actually dumb? I love Firestar, but he is way too trusting at this point. And he knows Darkstripe is bad. He just can't really prove anything yet, and he's been too nice to Darkstripe. But anyway, murder," repeated Graystripe. "Go on, ask him why he was feeding death berries to Sorrel-Kit, you mouse-brained fool." Darkstripe's voice was cold as he gazed up at his attacker. "I wasn't feeding her the berries, I was trying to stop her from eating them." "I know what I saw," Graystripe insisted through gritted teeth. Firestar tried to recall the image of the warrior in the kit that he had seen when he paused at the top of the ravine. "Let him get up," he meowed reluctantly to his friend. "Darkstripe, tell me what happened." The warrior rose and shook himself. Firestar could see bare patches on his flank where Graystripe had clawed out lumps of fur. "I was coming back to camp," he began. "I found the stupid kit stuffing herself with death berries, and I was trying to stop her when this idiot jumped on me." He stared resentfully at Graystripe. "Why would I want to murder a kit?" "That's what I want to know," spat Graystripe. "Of course, we know who the noble Firestar will believe," Darkstripe sneered. "There's no use expecting justice in ThunderClan these days." The accusation stung Firestar, all the more so because he recognized that there was a core of truth in it. He would take Graystripe's word over Darkstripe's any day, but he had to be absolutely certain that his friend wasn't making a mistake. "I don't have to decide now," Firestar meowed. "As soon as Sorrel-Kit wakes up, she'll be able to tell us what happened." As he spoke, he thought he saw a flicker of unease in Darkstripe's eyes, but it was gone so quickly he could not be sure. The Dark Warrior twitched his ears contemptuously. "Fine," he meowed. "Then you'll see which of us is telling the truth." He stalked off toward the camp entrance with his tail held high. "I did see it, Firestar," Graystripe assured him, his sides heaving from the fight. "I can't understand why he'd want to hurt Sorrel-Kit, but I'm quite sure that's what he was doing." Firestar sighed. "I believe you, but we have to let every cat see that justice is done. I can't punish Darkstripe until Sorrel-Kit tells us what happened. If she ever does," he added silently to himself. He watched Cinderpelt and Willowpelt gently picking up the kit and carrying her toward the gorse tunnel. Sorrel-Kit's head lolled limply and her tail brushed the ground. Firestar's belly clenched as he remembered the kit bouncing around the camp. If Darkstripe had really tried to kill her, he would pay. "Hey, I just said that." "Graystripe," he murmured. "Go with Cinderpelt. I want you or another warrior on guard in her den until Sorrel-Kit wakes up. Ask Sandstorm and Goldenflower if they'll help. I don't want anything else to happen to Sorrel-Kit before she's fit to talk." Graystripe's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Okay, Firestar," he meowed. "I'm on my way." He bounded down the slope and caught up with the other cats as they disappeared into the tunnel. Firestar was left in the ravine with Bramblepaw. "I've left a squirrel up there," he meowed to his apprentice, jerking his head toward the top of the ravine. "Could you collect it for me, please? And then you can rest and eat. You've had a long day." "Thanks," Bramblepaw mewed. He took a few steps up the ravine and glanced back. "Sorrel-Kit will be okay, won't she?" Firestar let out a long breath. "I don't know, Bramblepaw," he admitted. "I just don't know." Well, that's a rather dark way to start this episode. That's the end of Chapter 8, so we'll see if Sorrel-Kit survives. Going right into Chapter 9, Firestar goes back to camp, deep in thought. Darkstripe is gulping down prey from the Freshco pile. The audacity. And Mousefur, Goldenflower, and Frostfur are nearby, but have their backs turned on him. Graystripe likely spread the news around already, and if the queens are angry at Darkstripe, that means they believe Graystripe, which is a good sign that he's gaining trust from the clan again. Quote, Firestar was heading toward Graystripe when movement by the warrior's den caught his eye. Brackenfur was just emerging from between the branches, gazing wildly around. He spotted Darkstripe, took a step toward him, and then veered away to join Firestar. "I've just heard," he gasped. "Firestar, I'm sorry. He got away from me. This is all my fault." "Steady." Firestar let his tail rest a moment on the agitated young warrior's shoulder, gesturing for calm. "Tell me what happened." Brackenfur took a couple of gulping breaths, struggling for self-control. "Darkstripe said he was going out to hunt," he began. "I went with him, but when we got into the forest, he said he had to make dirt. He went behind a bush, and I waited for him. He was taking a long time, so I went to look, and he'd gone." His eyes stretched wide with dismay. If Sorrelkit dies, I'll never forgive myself. Sorrelkit won't die, Firestar reassured him, though he was not certain that it was the truth. The kit was still very ill. And now there was something else to worry about. Brackenfur's stories showed that Darkstripe had realized he was being watched. He had gotten rid of his guard very neatly. He must have had a reason, Firestar reflected. What had the Dark Tabby meant to do, and why had he tried to kill Sorrelkit? What do you want me to do now? Brackenfur asked miserably. Stop blaming yourself, to begin with, Firestar replied. Darkstripe was bound to let us know where his loyalties lie sooner or later. Except for his anxiety over Sorrelkit, Firestar wasn't sorry that Darkstripe had shown his true self in a way that no cat could ignore. Although he had hoped to keep the Dark Warrior in the clan, where he could watch him for signs of treachery, now he knew that Darkstripe would never be loyal, to him or to ThunderClan, and there could be no place for a cat who would poison a defenseless kit. Let him go to Tigerstar, where he belongs, Firestar thought. Carry on guarding Darkstripe, he went on to Brackenfur. You can let him know you're doing it now. Tell him from me he's not to leave camp until Sorrelkit can tell her story. Brackenfur gave a tense nod and hurried across to the nettle patch, where he crouched beside Darkstripe and spoke to him. The warrior snarled something in reply and went back to tearing apart his piece of fresh kill. Sandstorm comes to gather him to eat by the nettle patch. She tells him she'll take over guarding Cinderpelt's den after Greystripe. Firestar glances at Darkstripe to see him finish his prey and stalk to the warrior's den, Brackenfur following. Dustpelt leaves as Darkstripe arrives and pointedly stays far away from him. If even Dustpelt isn't talking to his former mentor, this is bad news for Darkstripe. Which is good, because I've been preying on his downfall for a long time. Quote, Firestar picked out a magpie from the fresh kill pile and took it over to the nettle patch. Hey, Firestar, meowed Mousefur as he approached. Thornpaw said you were going to have a word with me about his warrior ceremony. It's about time. It certainly is, Firestar agreed. Bluestar's refusal to make the 3 oldest apprentices into warriors had led to Swiftpaw's death and Lostface's injuries, and there wouldn't be a cat in the clan who didn't remember that when Thornpaw finally received his warrior name. Why don't the 3 of us take the dawn patrol tomorrow? That should give me a chance to see how he's shaping up. Not that I have any doubts, he added hastily. I should think not, Mousefur mewed. Will you tell Thornpaw about the patrol, or shall I? I will, Firestar replied, taking a quick bite of his magpie. I want a word with Fernpaw and Ashpaw, too. When he and Sandstorm had finished eating, the ginger she-cat went off to Cinderpelt's den, while Firestar padded over toward the tree stump where the apprentices ate. Dustpelt and Fernpaw were already there with Thornpaw and Ashpaw, and Cloudtail was just strolling over from the elder's den, Lostface close beside him. Thornpaw. Firestar gave the apprentice a nod as he settled down beside him. Are your claws sharp? All your warrior skills ready? Thornpaw sat up straight, his eyes suddenly gleaming. Yes, Firestar. Dawn patrol tomorrow, then, Firestar told him. If it goes well, we'll hold your ceremony at Sunhigh. Thornpaw's ears quivered with anticipation, but then the light in his eyes slowly died and he looked away. What's the matter? Firestar asked. Swiftpaw and Lostface. Thornpaw spoke in a low voice, with a flick of the tail toward the injured she-cat. They should both be with me. I know. Firestar closed his eyes briefly at the memory of so much pain. But you mustn't let that spoil it for you. You've deserved this for moons. I will be with you, Thornpaw. Lostface spoke up from where she was sitting beside Cloudtail. I'll be the first cat to call you by your new name. Thanks, Lostface. Thornpaw mewed with a grateful dip of his head. And while we're on the subject of names, Cloudtail broke in. What about hers? He tilted his head toward Lostface. He always refused to use the cruel name Bluestar had bestowed on the injured cat. What about getting it changed? Can you change a warrior's name? Firestar asked. It's given in the sight of StarClan. Cloudtail let out a sigh of exasperation. I never thought I'd call my clan leader a mousebrain, but honestly, do you think One Eye or Halftail started off with those names? They had other warrior names first, you can be sure of that. There must be a ceremony of some sort. And I know the rest of the clan won't accept a new name until you've said the right words. Cloudtail is actually super smart compared to his apprentice days. I think he gets very labeled as like a himbo. He kind of is a himbo, but he's a lot smarter than the fandom tends to generalize him as. Please, Firestar. Lostface was looking at him with a hopeful expression. I'm sure the other cats wouldn't feel so awkward talking to me if I didn't have this awful name. Of course. Firestar felt a stir of distress that he hadn't noticed the burden the young cat was carrying. I'll talk to the elders right away. One Eye is bound to know what to do. He rose to his paws and suddenly remembered what else he had meant to say. Ashpaw, Fernpaw, don't think that you've been forgotten. You were brilliant in the race with the dog pack, but you're still a bit young to be made warriors. That was true, but at the same time, Firestar wanted Thornpaw to keep his seniority by being made warrior first. I promise it won't be long, he told them. We understand, Ashpaw mewed. There's still stuff we need to learn. Firestar? Fernpaw asked nervously. What's going to happen about Darkstripe? If he did that to Sorrelkit, I don't want him for my mentor. If he did that to Sorrelkit, he won't be your mentor, Firestar promised. Sorrelkit? Cloudtail demanded. What's all this about Sorrelkit? Did something happen while we were out hunting? Immediately, Thornpaw and Ashpaw shifted position to crouch beside him in Lostface and began passing on the news in hushed voices. So who's going to mentor Fernpaw then? Dustpelt asked Firestar, taking it for granted that Darkstripe was guilty. I could manage her as well as Ashpaw, he suggested hopefully. Fernpaw brightened, but Firestar shook his head. Not a chance, Dustpelt. You wouldn't be nearly tough enough with her. Dustpelt's eyes sparked with annoyance. Then he nodded sheepishly. I suppose you're right. Don't worry, Firestar promised as he headed for the Elder's Den. I'll make sure she gets a good mentor. Yeah, I don't think you should mentor someone you're romantically interested in, who's also younger than you. Not the HR violation. Firestar is not going to let Dustpelt violate HR. Inside their den beside the fallen tree trunk, the elders were settling down for the night. What's the matter now? Small-Ear grumbled, raising his head from his mossy nest. Can't a cat get a wink of sleep around here? Dappletail let out a drowsy purr. Don't listen to him, Firestar. You're always welcome. Thanks, Dappletail, Firestar meowed. But it's One Eye I want to talk to. One Eye was curled up in a clump of ferns in the shelter of the trunk. She blinked her single eye and opened her jaws in a huge yawn. I'm listening, Firestar, but make it quick. I need to ask you about names, Firestar began, and he explained how Cloudtail wanted a new name for Lostface. At the sound of the young cat's name, Speckletail padded over and sat listening. She had cared for Lostface when she was newly injured, and a strong bond had developed between them. I can't say I blame Cloudtail, she commented when Firestar had finished. No cat wants a name like that. One Eye yawned. I was already old when they changed my name to One Eye, she mewed. And to be honest, I don't care what they call me so long as they bring the fresh kill on time. But it's different for a young cat. So can you tell me what to do? Firestar prompted. Of course I can. One Eye raised her tail and beckoned him closer. Come here, and listen carefully. And then it cuts off there. Ooh, building anticipation. So the next morning, Firestar and Mousefur take Thornpaw out for his assessment. First, Firestar tests its hunting skills. Thornpaw remembers to step lightly when hunting a mouse and catches it successfully. Firestar praises him, telling him to bury it for later. They go to Snake Rocks next to check for scents. Firestar tries not to remember that this is where the dogs lived and where Swiftpaw and Lostface were attacked. It's silent upon arrival. Thornpaw can smell stale fox, squirrel, and a trace of dog, glancing worriedly at Firestar. He can also smell the Thunderpath and strange cat scent. Firestar orders him to take a look. It could be just a lost kitty pet, but you can never be certain. Quote, as the three cats padded warily through the undergrowth, the scent grew stronger. Firestar felt more certain now about the scent. Rogues or loners, he meowed. 3 of them, I'd guess. And the scent is fresh. We must have just missed them. But what are they doing on our territory? Thornpaw asked. Are they Tigerstar's rogues, do you think? He was referring to the band of clanless cats who had helped Tigerstar to attack ThunderClan during his exile, before he had joined ShadowClan. No, replied Mousefur. Tigerstar's rogues took on ShadowClan scent long ago. This must be a new lot. As for what they're doing, Firestar added, I'd like to know that too. Let's follow them. Thornpaw, you lead. Thornpaw was serious now, his excitement and his upcoming warrior ceremony lost in the possible threat from the group of rogues. He did his best to follow the scent, but lost it in a marshy stretch of ground where not even Firestar could pick it up again. I'm sorry, Firestar, mewed Thornpaw, crestfallen. It's not your fault, Firestar reassured him. If the scent's gone, it's gone. He raised his head, staring in the direction the trail had led them. It looked as if the strange cats were heading for the Thunderpath, or perhaps for Two Lake Place. In either case, they were on their way out of the territory. He shrugged. I'll tell the patrols to keep a lookout, but hopefully there's nothing to worry about. That was well scented, Thornpaw. Turning to the young cat, he added with a purr of approval. Let's head back to camp. We have a warrior ceremony to arrange. Let me guess. This will be something to worry about. Let all cats old enough to catch their own prey join here beneath the high rock for a clan meeting. Almost at once, Firestar saw Thornpaw approaching from the apprentice's den with Mousefur beside him. Both cats had groomed themselves for the ceremony. Thornpaw's golden-brown fur shone in the gray light of Leafbear, and he looked as if he would burst with pride. As he waited for the rest of the clan to emerge, Firestar spotted Cinderpelt coming from her den. Graystripe was with her, and the two cats had their heads together, talking in low voices. Firestar wondered how Sorrelkit was getting on. He had briefly looked into the medicine cat's den before he left with the Dawn Patrol. The kid had been sleeping then, and Cinderpelt had still not been prepared to say whether she thought the poison was out of her system. Firestar decided to check on Sorrelkit again as soon as the ceremony was over. He could not help noticing Darkstripe emerging from the warrior's den with Brackenfur right behind him. When they sat down in front of the high rock, a space cleared itself all around them. None of the other cats wanted to be anywhere near Darkstripe. The warrior stared straight ahead with a sneer on his face. The Firestar guessed he would be as anxious as the rest of them to know if Sorrelkit would recover. The social distancing from a creep? Love it. Firestar looked at the rest of the clan for a moment. This was a day that Thornpaw would remember for the rest of his life, but it was special for Firestar too, because Thornpaw was the first warrior he would make as clan leader. His voice rang out clearly as he began the ceremony with the words that were familiar to him from his own ceremony and all the others he had seen. I, Firestar, leader of ThunderClan, call upon my warrior ancestors to look down on this apprentice. He has trained hard to understand the ways of your noble code, and I commend him to you as a warrior in his turn." Turning to the apprentice, Firestar continued, "Thornpaw, do you promise to uphold the warrior code and to protect and defend this clan, even at the cost of your life?" Thornpaw's reply was firm and confident. "I do." "Then by the powers of StarClan," Firestar declared, "I give you your warrior name. Thornpaw. From this moment, you will be known as Thornclaw. StarClan honors your loyalty and your intelligence, and we welcome you as a full warrior of ThunderClan." Stepping forward, Firestar rested his muzzle on the top of Thornclaw's head, feeling the new warrior quiver with excitement. Thornclaw looked his shoulder in return, and met his gaze with a long look in which happiness and sorrow were mingled. Firestar knew he was remembering his den-mate Swiftpaw, dead before he could know the fulfillment of being a warrior. As Thornclaw stepped back to join the warriors, Lostface slipped over to him. "Thornclaw!" she purred, swiping her tongue over his ear. She had kept her promise to be the first cat to greet him with his new warrior name, and her voice held warmth and pride in his achievement. Cloudtail pressed up behind her, greeting Thornclaw in his turn, and flashed a questioning look at Firestar. Firestar gave him a nod. For a few moments he allowed the clan to welcome the new warrior by chanting his name, and then he signaled with his tail for silence. When the cats had settled down, he meowed. "Before you go, I have something more to say. First, I want to honor the apprentice who should have been here, receiving his warrior name along with Thornclaw. You all know how Swiftpaw met his death trying to hunt down the dog pack who threatened us. His clan will always remember that." There was a murmur of agreement from the assembled cats. Firestar glanced at Longtail, who had been the dead apprentice's mentor, and saw a look of pride and grief cross his face. "In addition," Firestar continued, "I want to give thanks from the clan to Fernpaw and Ashpaw. They showed the bravery of warriors in the race against the dogs, and although they are still too young to receive their warrior names, we honor them." "Fernpaw! Ashpaw!" The two apprentices looked overwhelmed to hear themselves praised by their clanmates, and Dustpelt's eyes shone with delight. Only Darkstripe, Fernpaw's mentor, remained silent, staring coldly in front of him without even turning to look at his apprentice. Firestar waited until the noise died down. "There's one more ceremony to perform." He flicked his tail to beckon Lostface out of the crowd. Nervously, she stepped forward to stand in front of him. Cloudtail followed her, remaining a tail length or so away. A murmur of surprise went through the watching cats. Many of them, Firestar realized, would not know what was about to happen. The name-changing ceremony for a warrior who had already been given a new name had not been held for many seasons. Remembering what One Eye had told him, he began to speak. "Spirits of StarClan, you know every cat by name. I ask you now to take away the name from the cat you see before you, for it no longer stands for what she is." He paused and saw the young ginger and white she-cat shiver as she waited, nameless, before StarClan. Firestar hoped she would like the name he had chosen for her. He had thought hard before he was sure he had gotten it right. "By my authority as clan leader," Firestar announced, "and with the approval of our warrior ancestors, I give this cat a new name. From this moment, she will be known as Brightheart, for though her body has been gravely injured, we honor her brave spirit and the light that shines on within her." Perfect. 10 out of 10. No notes. I got a little emotional at this part, honestly. It's just perfect. He stepped close to the newly named Brightheart, and as he had done in the warrior ceremony, rested his muzzle on her head. She responded like any newly named warrior by licking his shoulder. "Brightheart! Brightheart!" The yowl rose from the assembled cats. Brightheart had been popular when she was an apprentice, and the whole clan had grieved over her injuries. She would never be a warrior in the truest sense of the word, but there would always be a place for her in ThunderClan. Firestar led Brightheart to where Cloudtail was waiting. "Well," he asked, "is that fair enough for you?" Cloudtail could barely reply. He was too busy pressing his muzzle against Brightheart's and winding his tail with hers. "It's perfect, Firestar," he murmured. Brightheart's good eye brimmed with happiness, and she was purring too hard to speak, but she blinked her gratitude at Firestar. She had carried the burden of Bluestar's anger against StarClan for too long, and even if she could never become a full warrior, she had a name to be proud of now. Firestar swallowed, his throat choked with emotion. It was moments like this that made being a leader worthwhile. "Listen, Firestar," meowed Cloudtail after a moment. "Brightheart and I are going to train together. We're going to work on a fighting technique she can manage with just one eye and ear. When she's able to fight again, she can leave the elders and come to live in the warrior's den with the rest of us?" Well, Firestar was uncertain. Brightheart could never be a full warrior because she couldn't hunt alone, and she would be at a serious disadvantage in a fight. But it was hard to resist her determination. Besides, Firestar wanted her to be able to defend herself and her clanmates as best she could. "You haven't got an apprentice yet, Cloudtail," he agreed. "So you do have the time to spend with Brightheart. Does that mean we can train together?" Cloudtail urged. "Please, Firestar," meowed Brightheart. "I want to be some use to the clan." "All right," Firestar agreed. With a sudden thought, he added, "If you work out some new moves, we can teach them to the others. Brightheart isn't the first warrior to be injured like this, and she won't be the last." "Disability rights! Woke clan!" Cloudtail meowed agreement. The two young cats were moving away when Whitestorm, who had been Brightheart's mentor, came up to congratulate her. To Firestar, he added, "I looked in on Sorrelkit just before the ceremony. She was starting to wake up. Cinderpelt thinks she'll recover. That's great news, Firestar purred. Whitestorm, he remembered, was Sorrelkit's father. Do you think she's fit yet to tell us what happened? You'll have to ask Cinderpelt, the White Warrior replied. Go now. I'll see to the patrols. Firestar thanked him and hurried toward the medicine cat's den. Cinderpelt met him at the mouth of the fern tunnel. I was coming to look for you, she meowed. After hearing Whitestorm's good news, Firestar was surprised to see the depth of anxiety in her eyes. Sorrelkit is awake, she went on. She's going to be fine. But you need to hear the story she has to tell. Oh? Darkstripe is about to get cooked, I'm guessing. That is the end of chapter 9. Kind of a long one. I gotta take a drink of water after that. Alright, getting right into chapter 10. Quote, Sorrelkit was curled up in a mossy nest near the entrance to Cinderpelt's den. She raised her head as Firestar approached with the medicine cat, but her eyes were heavy and it looked as though she was finding it difficult to move. Sandstorm was crouched close beside her on guard duty. Poor little Scrap, she murmured to Firestar. She nearly died. We've got to do something about Darkstripe. The pale ginger she-cat was looking as anxious as Cinderpelt. She would have heard Sorrelkit's story, too, Firestar realized. He nodded. You can leave Darkstripe to me. Settling down beside Sorrelkit, he mewed gently. I'm glad to see you're awake, Sorrelkit. Can you tell me what happened to you? The tiny tortoiseshell kit blinked up at him. Sitkit and Rainkit were asleep in the nursery, she began in a faint voice. But I wasn't sleepy. My mother wasn't watching, so I went to play in the ravine. I wanted to catch a mouse. And then I saw Darkstripe. Her voice shook and she hesitated. Go on, Firestar encouraged her. He was coming up the ravine by himself. I knew he should have had Brackenfur with him, and I wondered where he was going. I followed him. I remember the time he took Bramblepaw and Tawnypaw out of the camp, and I thought I might have an adventure like that too. Firestar felt a pang of sadness as he remembered how Sorrelkit was always so bright and curious, getting into trouble because of her misguided courage. This limp scrap of fur didn't look at all adventurous now, and Firestar could only hope that with Cinderpelt's care she would soon be her lively self again. I followed him a long way, Sorrelkit went on, sounding rather proud of herself. I'd never been so far from the camp. I hid from Darkstripe, too. He didn't know I was there. And then he met another cat, a cat I'd never seen before. What other cat? What did it look like? What scent did it have? Firestar questioned her urgently. Sorrelkit looked bewildered. I didn't recognize the scent, she mewed, her nose wrinkled. But it was yucky. He was a big white cat, bigger than you, Firestar, and he had black paws. Firestar stared at her as he realized whom she had seen. Blackfoot, he exclaimed. Tigerstar's deputy. That was ShadowClan's scent you smelled, Sorrelkit. Ooh, yep, Darkstripe is done. You're done. And what's Darkstripe doing meeting the ShadowClan deputy on our territory? Sandstorm growled. That's what I'd like to know. So what happened then? Firestar prompted the kit. I got scared, Sorrelkit admitted, looking down at her paws. I ran back to camp, but I think Darkstripe must have heard me, because he caught up with me in the ravine. I thought he would be angry because I spied on him, but he told me how clever I was. He gave me some red berries for a special treat. They looked tasty, but when I ate them, I started to feel really ill. And I don't remember anything else except waking up here. She sank her head on her paws again as she finished, as if telling the long story had exhausted her. Cinderpelt nosed her gently, checking her breathing. Those were death berries, she mewed. You must never, ever touch them again. I won't, Cinderpelt, I promise, murmured the tiny kit. Thank you, Sorrelkit, Firestar meowed. He was angry but not surprised to discover that Graystripe had been right all along. The real shock was the news that Blackfoot had been seen on ThunderClan territory, and that Darkstripe had obviously arranged to meet him. What are you going to do about Darkstripe? Asked Sandstorm. I'll have to question him, Firestar replied. But I don't expect he'll tell me anything. He can't stay in ThunderClan after this, Sandstorm pointed out, her voice hard as flint. There's more than one cat who would rip his throat out for a couple of mouse tails. Leave him to me, Firestar mewed grimly. Cinderpelt stayed with Sorrelkit, who was drifting off to sleep again, while Firestar returned to the main clearing with Sandstorm. Many of the cats were still there, sharing tongues after their earlier meeting. Whitestorm was heading for the gorse tunnel with Goldenflower and Longtail. The patrol turned back and all the cats looked up, startled, as Firestar bounded to the top of the high rock and yowled the summons to another meeting. His gaze sought out Darkstripe, but there was no sign of him. Where's Darkstripe? He meowed at Graystripe as his friend made his way to the base of the rock. In the den, Graystripe replied. Fetch him. Graystripe disappeared into the warrior's den and emerged a moment later with Darkstripe and Brackenfur by his side. All three cats returned to the base of the high rock, where Darkstripe sat and looked up at Firestar with a sneer on his face. Well, he asked, what does our noble leader want now? Firestar met his eyes steadily. Sorrelkit is awake. For a few heartbeats, Darkstripe held his gaze, and then he looked away. Have you called a clan meeting to tell us that? His tone was scoffing, but his fur had bristled uneasily at the news. Cats of ThunderClan. Firestar raised his voice. I've called you together so that you can witness what Darkstripe has to say. You all heard what happened to Sorrelkit yesterday. She's awake now, and Cinderpelt says she'll be fine. I've talked to her, and she confirms what Graystripe said. Darkstripe did feed her the deathberries. So, Darkstripe, his gaze went back to the Dark Warrior below. What have you to say for yourself? She's lying, Darkstripe retorted. An angry hiss came from more than one of the cats around him, and he added, blustering. Or she made a mistake. Kits never listen to what any cat says. She obviously didn't hear me properly when I told her not to eat them. She's not lying or mistaken, Firestar meowed. And she told me something even more interesting. Your reason for feeding her the deathberries. She saw you meeting Blackfoot, the deputy of ShadowClan on our territory. Would you like to tell us what that was all about? More furious snarls came from the clan, and a cat at the back of the crowd yelled, Traitor! Firestar had to signal with his tail for silence, and it was several moments before the angry cats quieted down again. Darkstripe waited until he could make himself heard. I don't have to justify myself to a kitty pet, he growled. Firestar's claws scraped against the rock beneath his paws, and he felt reassured by their sharpness. That's exactly what you have to do. I want to know what you and Tigerstar are planning. Panic suddenly flooded over him, and he forced it back. Darkstripe, you know what Tigerstar tried to do to us. The dog pack would have torn the whole clan to pieces. How can you even think of following him after that? Darkstripe bent his eyes resentfully and did not reply. Firestar remembered how he had caught him on the morning the pack attacked, trying to slip away from the camp with Tigerstar's kits. Darkstripe had known that Tigerstar was planning something. He would have abandoned the rest of the clan to a ghastly death without even trying to warn them. That was what his loyalty to ThunderClan was worth. Firestar wanted to be fair so that no cat, not even Darkstripe himself, could accuse him of persecuting Tigerstar's former allies. Even more than that, Firestar was still afraid of what Darkstripe might do if he left ThunderClan and was free to go to Tigerstar. But he was left with no choice. Exile was the only possible sentence for a cat guilty of Darkstripe's crimes. You could have been a valuable warrior, he went on to Darkstripe. I gave you one chance after another to prove yourself. I wanted to trust you, and trust me? Darkstripe interrupted. You've never trusted me. Do you think I didn't know you told that ginger fool to watch me? He spat the last words toward Brackenfur, still seated beside him. Did you expect me to live the rest of my days with a shadow? No. I was waiting for you to show your loyalty. Firestar crouched on the rock and held Darkstripe's furious gaze without flinching. This is the clan where you were born. These are the cats you grew up with. Doesn't that mean anything to you? The warrior code says you should protect them with your life. As Darkstripe rose to his paws, Firestar thought he could see fear flickering in his eyes, as if the Dark Warrior had never intended to make a final break with ThunderClan. He could not be sure, after all, that Tigerstar would welcome him. He had refused to follow the former deputy into exile, and he had failed in his attempt to take Bramblepaw and Tawnypaw to their father before the attack from the dogs. Tigerstar was not a cat who forgave easily, but there was no trace of fear or regret in Darkstripe's voice as he spoke. This is not my clan, he hissed scornfully, to gasps of shock from the warriors around him. Not any longer. ThunderClan is led by a kitty pet, and there's nothing left to fight for. I feel no loyalty to ThunderClan. In the whole forest, the only cat worth following is Tigerstar. He's the J.D. Vance to Donald Trump, bro. Then follow him, Firestar retorted. You are no longer a warrior of ThunderClan. If you are found in our territory after sunset today, we shall treat you as we would any enemy. Go now. Darkstripe's burning gaze held Firestar's for a moment longer, but he did not reply. Unhurriedly, he turned his back on Firestar and stalked toward the camp entrance. The cats nearby drew back as he passed them. You know what will be waiting for you if you try to come back, Cloudtail snarled, curling his lip. Willowpelt said nothing but spat, her fur bristling. As soon as the tip of Darkstripe's tail had vanished into the tunnel, a murmur of speculation broke out among the crowd of cats. One voice rose up clearly. Has Darkstripe gone to ShadowClan? Asked Tawnypaw. She had not joined in the clan's protests when Firestar tried to force Darkstripe to admit his guilt. Instead, she had watched everything in silent fascination, her eyes following the Dark Warrior every paw step of the way to the tunnel. She looked shocked and sickened, but there was something else in her expression that Firestar could not read. He froze as she asked her question. This apprentice knew that her father was the leader of ShadowClan. Did she understand the full extent of Darkstripe's treachery? Is she thinking of going to the dark side? I don't know, he admitted. Darkstripe can go where he likes. From now on, he is not a member of ThunderClan. Does that mean we can chase him out of the territory if we see him? Whitestorm called. Yes, it does, Firestar replied. Addressing all the cats, he added, If you send him or any ShadowClan cats, tell me or Whitestorm. And that reminds me. This morning, Thornclaw scented rogue cats on our territory. Keep a lookout for them, too, and report anything you find. Giving the orders helped him calm down. He could not help feeling the first creeping sensations of relief that at last he had Darkstripe out of his fur. There would be no more kitty pet taunts, no more worries about whether all the clan's business was being relayed straight to Tigerstar. Even though Firestar was worried about what Darkstripe would do now, there was more gain than loss in the Dark Warrior's departure. Yet still, Firestar could not help wishing that he could have earned his loyalty. Hey, Firestar! Dustpelt's voice startled him out of his thoughts. What about Fernpaw? She hasn't got a mentor now. Thanks, Dustpelt. I'll deal with that right away. Fernpaw, come up to the rock. Fernpaw obeyed, leaving Dustpelt's side to step delicately around the cats in her way until she stood at the foot of the high rock. Firestar glanced around to make sure the warrior he wanted was present, and hastily summoned the right words. Longtail, you are without an apprentice since Swiftpaw died. You were an excellent mentor to him, and I expect you to pass on your skills to Fernpaw for the rest of her apprenticeship. Longtail sprang to his paws, his eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. Firestar beckoned him with his tail, hoping that with Darkstripe gone, the last of the hostility between himself and Longtail could be buried. The pale tabby warrior could easily be a fine member of the clan. Still looking stunned, Longtail padded up to Fernpaw and touched noses with her. Fernpaw dipped her head, and both cats withdrew to where Dustpelt and Ashpaw were sitting. Firestar leaped down from the high rock. Now that everything was over, exhaustion hit him like a blow from a badger's paw. What he wanted more than anything was to curl up with his friends in the warrior's den, to share tongues and sleep. But as leader of the clan, he couldn't do that. Darkstripe's treachery and the knowledge that ShadowClan cats were on his territory had revived all the memories of his 9 Lives ceremony. Why had the Hill of Bones appeared in his dream, and the river of blood that had flowed from it? What did Bluestar's prophecy mean? Oh yeah, remember that? Desperate for answers, Firestar decided he would go to Cinderpelt's den to see if the medicine cat had received any guidance from StarClan. To his relief, Sandstorm was no longer on guard. He did not want the Ginger She-Cat to see him like this. Sorrelkit was asleep in her nest, and from the mouth of the split rock came faint sounds of Cinderpelt moving around inside. Firestar went closer and saw her rearranging the piles of ealing herbs and berries that she kept there. Nearly out of juniper, she muttered, then saw Firestar. What's the matter? What's happened now? She limped out of the den and came up to him, nosing him anxiously as she smelled his fear scent. Firestar, what's wrong? Firestar shook his head to clear it of apprehension. It was a relief to go right back to the beginning and tell Cinderpelt about the dream that had come to him as he lay beside the moonstone. Cinderpelt sat beside him and listened in silence, her steady gaze never leaving his face. Bluestar told me 4 will become 2. Lion and tiger will meet in battle, and blood will rule the forest, Firestar finished. And then blood oozed out of the Hill of Bones and started to fill the hollow. Blood everywhere. Cinderpelt, what does it all mean? I don't know, Cinderpelt confessed. StarClan have not shown me any of this. Just as they have the power to show me what will happen, so they can choose not to share with me. I'm sorry, Firestar. But I'll keep thinking about it, and maybe something will happen to make it clearer soon. She pushed her nose against Firestar's fur to comfort him, but though Firestar was grateful for her sympathy, he could not forget the horror of his dream. What dreadful fate lay in store for him? And if even Cinderpelt could not answer that question, what hope was there for ThunderClan? And that's the end of Chapter 10. Whew, long one this time. Lots of yapping. Last chapter for today, Chapter 11. Firestar is on patrol at Sunning Rocks with Graystripe and Thornclaw. Days had passed since Darkstripe's exile, and there's been no sign of him. Firestar is still haunted by his dream, and he's still on edge. Firestar tells Graystripe he doesn't smell anything unusual, but he wants to ensure RiverClan hasn't stalked across the border. Graystripe takes Thornclaw to renew the scent markers. Firestar remains in place, tasting the air. He wouldn't put it past Leopardstar to try to take Sunning Rocks again, so he's on his guard. Quote, not many moments passed before he detected fresh RiverClan scent. Instantly suspicious, he padded around the base of the rocks, only to relax a few moments later as he caught sight of Mistyfoot. She was alone, crouched at the very edge of the river, and as Firestar watched, she scooped a fish out of the water and killed it with one blow of her paw. Well done, Firestar called. Mistyfoot turned, saw him, and padded up the gently sloping bank as far as the border. Firestar went to meet her there, glad to see that she still looked friendly in spite of the way she had left the ThunderClan camp. But he noticed with alarm that Mistyfoot was much thinner than when he had last seen her, and he wondered if something bad had happened following the revelation that Bluestar had been her mother. How are you, Mistyfoot? He meowed. I hope there hasn't been any trouble. About me and Stonefur? Mistyfoot replied, guessing his thoughts. She hesitated. Stonefur told the clan the truth about Bluestar, she meowed at last. Some of them didn't like it. 1 or 2 of them won't talk to us at all now, and most of them are a bit uneasy with us. I'm sorry to hear that, Firestar mewed. What about Leopardstar? Has she said anything? I could tell she wasn't pleased. She supported us in front of the clan, but I think she has an eye on us all the same to make sure we're still loyal. Of course you're loyal, Firestar exclaimed. Yes, and the rest of the clan will realize it sooner or later. Besides, Mistyfoot paused again, and then went on. That isn't the worst of our problems. What do you mean? Tigerstar, Mistyfoot shivered. He visits Leopardstar regularly, and I can't work out why. I'm sure they're planning something. A jolt of fear shot through Firestar. Planning what? Mistyfoot twitched her ears. I've no idea. Leopardstar hasn't told Stonefur, even though he's her deputy. But there are a couple of ShadowClan warriors stationed permanently in our camp. What? That shouldn't happen. It must be against the warrior code. Mistyfoot shrugged, looking defeated. Try telling that to Leopardstar. But what are they doing there? Leopardstar says they're staying with us so the clans can exchange training methods and fighting techniques, but I don't see much sign of it. All they do is watch. It's like they're learning all about us, all our secrets and weaknesses. Mistyfoot's fur bristled as if she saw her enemies in front of her. That's why I came over here, to get away from them for a bit. Bro, Tigerstar is trying to start a fascist regime. He's literally Donald Trump, bro. That's terrible, Firestar meowed. What is Leopardstar thinking? You want my opinion? She wants to do the best for her clan, and she thinks Tigerstar is the strongest leader in the forest, so she set out to be his ally. I'm not sure Tigerstar has allies, Firestar warned her. Only followers. Mistyfoot nodded. I know. She sat down, licked one paw, and drew it 2 or 3 times over her ear. Firestar wondered if she was regretting saying so much to a warrior of another clan. How's the prey running? He asked, hoping to distract her. At least the river hasn't frozen yet. Not yet. Prey's scarce, but that's nothing new. Mistyfoot flicked her ears dismissively. It's Leaf Bear, after all, and those 2 warriors of Tiger Claws don't help, she added. They sit there in camp, stuffing their faces, but they never bring back much fresh kill. She broke off at the sound of Graystripe's voice yowling her name. Firestar turned to see his friend bounding down the bank toward them with Thornclaw just behind him. Hi, Mistyfoot, panted Graystripe as he came up. How are Featherpaw and Stormpaw? They're fine, Graystripe, replied Mistyfoot with a purr of welcome for her former clanmate. Though Graystripe's stay in RiverClan had been short, the 2 cats had become good friends, and Mistyfoot was always willing to give Graystripe news of his kits. Featherpaw is turning into a great fighter. ThunderClan will have to watch out when she's made a warrior. Graystripe let out a purr. Well, she couldn't have a better mentor. Firestar backed away while Graystripe and Mistyfoot discussed the 2 apprentices. Thornclaw padded up to him and meowed. We've renewed the scent markings, Firestar. There's no fresh RiverClan scent around the rocks. That's good, Firestar responded, though his thoughts were only half on what the young warrior was telling him. Mistyfoot's news deeply disturbed him. It sounded as if RiverClan and ShadowClan were allied more closely than ever before, and if Tigerstar decided to go to war, ThunderClan would be trapped between them. Oh, StarClan, Firestar murmured to himself. Show me what I should do. After his talk with Mistyfoot, Firestar ordered extra patrols, but no cat reported anything unusual. The days slipped past peacefully until the time of the next gathering approached. As the sun went down behind the thorn hedge, Firestar sat with Whitestorm beside the nettle patch, sharing fresh kill before the journey. Who will you take to the gathering? The White Warrior asked. Firestar swallowed a mouthful of squirrel. Not you, I think, he replied. I'm certain Tigerstar is going to make a move of some sort, and I want you to guard the camp. I'll leave you some strong warriors, too. I think you're right. Whitestorm swiped his tongue around his mouth as he finished his bowl. Tigerstar may have failed with the dog pack, but he's bound to try something else. I'll take Fernpaw and Ashpaw, Firestar decided, and Thornclaw. He'll be looking forward to his first gathering as a warrior. And Sandstorm, Graystripe, and Frostfur. That should leave you with enough fighting strength if Tigerstar sends warriors to attack. You think he'll break the truce? Inquired Whitestorm. Firestar flicked his ears. What do you think? He led the dog pack to us. Do you think he'd bother about doing a little thing like ignoring the will of StarClan? StarClan? Whitestorm snorted. Tigerstar behaves as if he's never heard of StarClan. He paused and then asked, What about the 2 young apprentices? Tigerstar's kits. Do you want to take them with you? Firestar shook his head. Not in 100 moons. You know what's going to happen, don't you? Tigerstar wants those kits. At the last gathering, he gave Bluestar 1 moon to decide whether to hand them over. That time's up now. If Bramblepaw and Tawnypaw are there, I wouldn't put it past Tigerstar to try taking them from the gathering. Nor would I, Whitestorm rumbled in agreement. You think we should keep them then? Firestar was startled. Don't you? He had assumed the ThunderClan would insist on their right to keep the 2 apprentices, but if his deputy thought that they should give the young cats to their father, Firestar would consider his opinion carefully. But Whitestorm was nodding. There's no question that they're ThunderClan kits. Their mother is ThunderClan, and so was their father at the time they were born. Tigerstar going to ShadowClan doesn't alter that. But if we want to keep them, we'll have to fight for them. Then we fight, Firestar meowed determinedly. Besides, he added, if we meekly hand them over, Tigerstar will see that as a sign of weakness. He'd be making more demands before you could say mouse. True. Firestar took another bite of squirrel, his eyes narrowing as his thoughts moved to the approaching gathering. You know, Whitestorm, he began. Tigerstar won't have it all his own way. I've got news for the gathering, too. How do you think the other clans will react when I tell them how Tigerstar tried to use the dog pack to destroy us? Not even Broken Tail was as ruthless as that. Even Tigerstar's own clan will turn against him. They might even drive him from the forest, and then we'll be rid of him. Whitestorm's ears twitched. To Firestar's surprise, the White Warrior didn't look as optimistic as he had expected. Maybe, he meowed. But don't be surprised if it doesn't work out like that. Firestar stared at him. You think the Warrior Code allows a cat to have another clan torn apart by dogs? No, of course not. But Tigerstar could always deny it. What proof do we have? Firestar thought seriously about what his deputy was saying. One cat, Longtail, had seen Tigerstar feed a rabbit to the pack. Several of the clan had detected Tigerstar's scent on the trail of rabbits. And Tigerstar had attacked Firestar himself close to the gorge to make sure that the dog pack caught him and pulled him down. Only Bluestar's sudden appearances saved him. True, Mistyfoot and Stonefur had witnessed Tigerstar's presence by the river that day, but they were already having problems within their own clan. If they spoke up against Tigerstar, their clanmates might not believe them. It would be wrong, Firestar realized, to add to their troubles. And all the rest of his evidence rested on the word of ThunderClan cats alone. Both WindClan and RiverClan knew there had been a serious rift between Tigerstar and his birth clan that had driven the former deputy to leave. Tigerstar could try to make it seem as if the ThunderClan cats were lying. Then we'll see who they believe, Firestar insisted angrily. Not every cat thinks that Tigerstar is StarClan's gift to the forest. He won't have it all his own way. Let's hope not. Whitestorm got to his paws and stretched. You're going to have a lively time tonight, Firestar. I'll go and tell the warriors you've chosen to be ready. As he padded away, Firestar crouched down beside the nettles and finished a squirrel. There was going to be trouble at the gathering. Tigerstar was certain to claim his kits again, and Firestar suspected that he would take this opportunity to reveal Bluestar's secret as well and denounce Mistyfoot and Stonefur as half-clan cats. But I've got plenty to say, too, he thought, pushing aside the doubts Whitestorm had raised. When I finish, no cat in the forest, not even his own clan, will trust Tigerstar again. I don't know about that one, bro. Tigerstar has a cult following. Make ThunderClan great again. Except he's not part of ThunderClan anymore, but that's the end of Chapter 11. And that is the end of today's episode. Kind of a cliffhanger. We'll see how the gathering goes. I'm really hoping that Firestar can convince the other clans, but when you're dealing with a fascist, racist leader who's very manipulative and powerful, your word kind of pales in comparison. As we are seeing with the current president of the United States and all the clear and blatant evidence against him that he is a racist pedophile piece of garbage. If you live in the US, you know. The whole world knows. We're a laughingstock. Like, it's actually embarrassing how terrible our country is becoming. I mean, I work 3 jobs, and I still barely make enough money to pay for my bills. Take it from someone who lives here. It's pretty terrible. I'd rather be anywhere but here. Anyway, I just thought that was a really interesting parallel. I'm like, the same things that are happening with Tigerstar are happening with the president of the United States. That's insane. Warrior Cats predicted Donald Trump. I make myself laugh. Thank you for joining me. As always, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Turn post notifications on. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure to rate me 5 stars, please and thank you if you're enjoying the podcast. I may or may not see you guys next week, but follow my socials to stay tuned about what is going to happen with next week. I will have to see how much work I have. It's not a small amount, but it might be doable that I can record before I go on vacation. But if I don't see you guys next week, I'll see you the week after. So don't worry. I'm coming back. Thank you for listening, and as always, may StarClan light your path.